Hello and welcome to another episode of the Veterans Corner. My name is Chuck Wood and I'll be your host. For those that haven't seen the Veterans Corner before, it's a show dedicated to our veterans, their families, and all those that support the veteran community. Tonight we have a special show. We have actually a familiar face to the Veterans Corner, and she's been with us twice in recent year. Actually, recently, it's been one of those days.
Recent months.
Recent months. There we go. Thanks, Jean. It's welcome back, Dr. Jean C. Folks. Dr. Jean, thanks for being here. It's a pleasure to have you back.
I'm always glad to be here, Chuck.
You know, it's today we're going to be talking about a subject that's very rarely discussed, and that is PTSD and how it affects families.
Exactly.
And actually for friends also, anybody that's close to the veteran community.
Yep.
So we're going to, before we jump into it though, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Dr. Jean. And so I didn't forget anything. It's all written down, and so I'm going to put my readers on here and read this to you. Dr. Jean C. Folks is a licensed professional counselor and is a clinical director of the Connecticut Psychotherapeutic Resources in Avon, Connecticut. It's a private practice dedicated to the treatment of psychological trauma. With 36 years in practice, she sees individuals, couples, and facilitate groups. She is a national workshop presenter, blogger, clinical and forensic consultant. Jean is also taught as an adjunct professor of psychology at the Central Connecticut State University and is a clinical instructor at the University of Connecticut School of Medicine. In addition, Jean is a certified EMDR therapist, an EMDR IA approved clinical case consultant, and master accelerated resolution practitioner. Did I say that right?
Close enough.
I got it. She has advanced training in emotional freedom techniques and is appreciated by clients, students, consultees alike for her insight, skill, and warm, good humor. Having met Jean before and having had her on the show before, it's all accurate. And it really is a pleasure and an honor to have you back.
Thanks, Chuck. So let's talk about families.
Yes, let's jump into this. You know, one of the things I have here is love enough to make everything right.
You want it to be.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it's not. Love really helps, but sometimes love can also confuse things because people feel like if they just love more, everything will be okay. And that's not necessarily the case. You know, people want their loved one to return to the person they were before they were traumatized. Yeah. And that person is forever changed. And there are behavioral differences, emotional differences that are hard to adjust to. And if you're trying to love somebody back to where they were a long time ago, it's a fool's errand. It won't work and it can't happen. If you can use that love to build a structure for a new normal and build the platform for a new relationship, then love is working in the right direction for you.
You know, another question I hear, it's pretty much, I think you might have, did you answer some? It's, what do you say to someone who says, I just want my loved one back?
You say, I know you do.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get your loved one back the way they once were. You have them back the way they are now, and you go forth together in the person they can become in terms of managing symptoms and getting better, and in some cases learning to live with some challenges. But you have to be forward-looking and not look back.
What causes personality changes with PTSD?
A lot of things. In some cases, it's actually a traumatic brain injury. There can be actual bruising that has caused permanent slight damage in the brain that can manifest in mood swings, in problems with anger, with all kinds of personality changes. And there is treatment that can do some things about that, but it may not completely resolve. People are also really looking at life in a different way. Their priorities have shifted. The things that once mattered a lot to them may not matter now, and other things may matter a lot. And so that may look like a personality change. And the person with PTSD is trying to manage both their symptoms and figuring out how to do relationships. And that's a lot, and it's frustrating, and it's embarrassing, and it's confusing. And all of those emotions can look like a change in a personality if somebody seemed very easygoing and happy-go-lucky before. So there are a lot of different changes that you can see, and it's not one size fits all. And I should also say, tonight that anything we talk about, we're talking in very general terms. Yeah. And your situation may be unique and may not be able to apply everything that we're saying here tonight. And each person needs to be consulting a qualified licensed mental health professional to see how this applies to them.
PTSD is PTSD, but it affects every single person differently.
It does. I mean, there's such a broad constellation of symptoms, and that constellation configures in a vast variety of ways.
One symptom everybody may have the same symptom, but it's affecting each one differently.
Absolutely.
One thing that I'm sure that the family member that has PTSD is it's going through their head, have I let my family down?
That's a big one. And interestingly, Chuck, that is one of the concerns with people with PTSD who get in the most trouble in their family and close relationships because they are embarrassed. They're ashamed sometimes. They feel like, they want to be the person they once were as much as their family wants them to be. And they feel like they're not delivering the goods. Especially with combat veterans, these men and women went to war to protect and defend their families. And now they come back and they feel like they're causing their families problems. Yeah. And it's horrifying to them, and they feel like through force of will they should find some way to just overcome this. And when that seems to fail, and it's bound to fail because you can't force of will get through PTSD, the reverse conclusion that many PTSD sufferers come to is, I should pull back. I should isolate. I should spend less time with my family. I should just go away, or I should, just spend time taking long walks, but I should leave my family alone.
So it doesn't affect them as much.
Not exactly, and the impulse is protective, but the result is disastrous, because then you have a family that loves you and worries about you and doesn't even have access to you. Yeah. And then you're living in this isolated bubble of shame, and then nothing can happen relationally within the family, and that's a tragedy.
It enhances the symptoms. Does the role / identity of the protector, as we were just talking about, that obviously complicates things.
It complicates things a lot. Yeah. And worst case scenario, and you and I know from past shows that we're never afraid to talk about the tough stuff.
Yeah.
But the worst case scenario, when you feel like the only way to protect my family is to separate these symptoms from them, that the person with PTSD may either simply leave the family, or in the worst case scenario may commit suicide, actually believing it's the kindest thing they can do for their family to remove this burden from them. And of course, it's the most heart-wrenching, devastating thing that anyone could possibly do. But when a person is that deep into their symptomology, they're not thinking clearly. And of course, that is worst case, and the vast majority of people, manage to find a way through this.
Now, is PTSD, can it wear off on the loved ones because they're dealing with what the person that has PTSD?
That is a great question, and actually there's a whole body of literature about that, and there is a term. It's called vicarious traumatization. It means that I become traumatized by being in the orbit of someone else that's traumatized. And so yes, it's absolutely possible that the loved ones of someone with PTSD can begin to actually manifest some minor symptoms of PTSD themselves, because there is an element of it that's contagious. And we really need to be on the lookout for that. And when families seek help, that's one of the things that gets talked about, so that nobody has to feel crazy and nobody has to feel bad or wrong. Nobody's doing anything wrong. This is an illness, and there's a lot of things that can be done to make it better.
So it's really important that when someone does seek help through you, that they actually do consider, if they're by themselves, that's one thing, but if they do have a family, wife, it's good to include them on occasion.
Absolutely. I love speaking to spouses.
Yeah.
And the spouse can also give a more objective reflection on symptoms that they see at home, because I'm only getting the symptoms as the patient reports it. And of course, the patient is trying hard to be honest, but nobody has 100% objectivity about themselves. And when a husband or wife comes in and says, well, my spouse is, waking up 5 times a night, and in a cold sweat, and that was news to me. I hadn't heard about that. Not because necessarily it was being hidden.
Just didn't know.
Just didn't know.
Yeah. Or didn't feel as if it was important.
Or didn't, all kinds of reasons. Yeah.
So it is good to have, and that's something that's good to have the viewers know.
Absolutely. Let your spouse help. Yeah. And it's really, really hard, because I know a lot of us, when we have big symptoms, we want to do it on our own and, not drag our loved ones down. But the feelings of aloneness and isolation and being shut out from being able to participate or help is far more heartbreaking than whatever hardship is involved in being in it together.
Yeah. We're talking about spouses. There's another major component of the family, and that's the children.
Absolutely.
How does the trauma symptoms impact parenting skills, for the children?
Well, I'll tell you one of the great secrets of the universe, just special tonight, just for you.
Don't tell anybody.
No, just between us. Kids are not deaf, and kids are not emotionally blind.
Yeah.
Kids know a lot more about what's going on in their house than anybody realizes. And if you think you're shielding and protecting your kids from the struggles that are going on, you're wrong.
Yeah.
The problem is they don't know everything. And so they pick up problems and concerns and tensions, and then they begin to build their own narrative to explain what's going on. And sometimes they do that accurately, and sometimes they're off the mark. Sometimes they feel like it's their fault, or they're not being good enough kids, or they should know how to help and they don't, or they come up with all kinds of cockamamie notions. Kids need to certainly not be burdened, but they need to be included in the same way as if somebody in the house had cancer, or somebody else in the house had diabetes, or any other concern. He says, we're in this together, and here's things that we need to learn how to do. Here's things that we have to try and not do. And here's how we give room. And here's how we say, no, you've isolated enough. You need to come be with us. And to have a voice in the life of a family. And again, these protective urges of, well, my husband or my wife is the far better parent anyway. I'll just leave the parenting to them and I will stay out of it. Again, it's right church, wrong pew.
Yeah.
I understand what's motivating it, but you're coming to the wrong conclusion if you're doing it that way.
With children being more vulnerable, I mean, that spread,
The vicarious
trauma.
It's possible, but children actually do well with the truth. And the more truth you tell them, the calmer they will be, because then they don't feel like there are secrets and things being hidden and things that I can't know, and so things must be even more terrible than I imagine. Yeah. Kids calm down even when they're told hard truths, because they feel included, they feel respected, and they don't feel crazy.
Yeah. It's complicated.
Very.
Here's a good question, and I've heard this before, and the thing that nobody talks about: how can life in the bedroom be impacted by PTSD?
A lot of different ways. Some simple ways, a lot of people with PTSD have sleep disturbances. Yeah. They have nightmares. They have night terrors. They get up and pace. They wake up in the night and they don't recognize the person who's in bed with them. A lot of things can go on that are scary and hard, and that person may wind up sleeping someplace else in the house at night, just for the peace and safety of both. There are also issues with libido. Sex drive can definitely plummet in some cases with PTSD. Erectile dysfunction can be a possibility. Women can and men can lose their interest in sex and their sex drive. And some of that can be related to medications, and sometimes medications can be adjusted to help that. In other cases, it's a direct symptom of the PTSD itself. But again, facing it, talking about it, letting go of shame, and knowing there are things to be done, that can be done to make it better. Yeah. And on the flip side, I have also seen people want the sexual aspect of the marriage to fix everything, and that won't work either.
Yeah. Which goes back to the first question, love. They figure that will take care of it.
It doesn't conquer all. It conquers a lot. But you also need some skill and information and a whole lot of truth telling.
Yeah, I just to share some things that I've heard. As far as waking up and not recognizing the person that's in bed with you. I've heard of people that have pretty much, violently thrown or kicked, a spouse right out of bed, and they both wake up and they don't realize they don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Especially the one on the receiving end.
Yes, it can be really, really frightening and confusing, and it's hard to know, now what do we do? Yeah. Yeah, it's time to talk to somebody.
Yeah. Can marriage and primary relationships survive PTSD?
Absolutely. They don't always. But with the right work, it really can actually get to an even better place. There's a wonderful website called brainline.org, BRAINLINE.org, and they have an article on their website, Marriage Tips for Family Living with PTSD. And I just want to run through, I don't know how much time we have.
We have time.
Just a couple of these because they're so good, I couldn't improve on them. So why reinvent the wheel? Try to spend at least 30 minutes a day together alone. So that's, the spouses spending time together alone without kids, without phones, without anything, and just really talking about feelings. Get a kitchen timer if you need to, and use it so that you're not worrying about, oh, we're going to be here for the next 3 hours, but you're also giving it a good chunk of time. Don't spend a lot of time dreaming about the good old days, the glory days. Yeah. If you're living in too much regret about the past, you're not going to see the potential right here in this moment and the hope for the future. Don't be the invisible spouse. We've definitely talked about the receding and the going away.
That's common.
And it's very common. Yeah. Just like it's the little things that will kill a marriage, it's the little things that will save it. Yeah, you can plan the big vacation to the Bahamas and stack all kinds of hopes and dreams about we're going to go away for a week and then everything is going to move and change, and when we come back it'll all be different. That may be a bit of a setup.
Yeah.
It's more the little daily things, the willingness to truth tell on a daily basis. I'm not doing so well right now. I'm feeling a little lost and spacey. I think I just need to be quiet for a few minutes. Can you take the kids? Or thank you. Thank you for staying here with me while, I breathe through this symptom. Or thank you for going to see my therapist with me. Or, let's just put hot dogs on the grill outside and just sit. So those little things are much more the mortar that holds the bricks of the relationship together.
Downtime together.
Absolutely. No one, always, or nevers. It's true. As soon as you start saying, we will always or we will never, you're in trouble. You want to be spacious and have room for whatever's happening in the moment. Don't compare notes with other families. You're your own family, do it your way. And comparisons tend to build tension. They don't tend to bring peace.
Well, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Every single person, couple, everything is unique.
Yeah. And this one sounds a little corny, but it's really true. Find something new to fall in love with about your spouse every single day. See them with new eyes in the here and now. See how brave, how resourceful, how determined, how invested this remarkable person is that you're in relationship with, and cherish and value them for who they are and what they're bringing to the table today.
Yeah. Very, very helpful information, tips. I mean, it's that's this show. I think we both talked about it. This is something that has not really been brought to the forefront all that much. And I'm glad that you were here to be able to do this. And in the future, I'm sure there's a lot more information that we can put out there.
Absolutely.
We need to we need to concentrate just as much
Right.
about this subject as we are the individuals.
Absolutely. And in the show a few months ago, I said, the one thing we didn't really talk about is families.
Yeah.
So
We've only got a couple minutes left, and I've heard the term post-traumatic growth. I wrote down here, is that a real thing? I'm sure it is.
It is a real thing. Yeah, and we talk about trauma so much that we forget that there are silver linings in PTSD, and in post-traumatic growth, we can become more compassionate, we can become more patient, we can become more understanding with the faults and foibles of other people, we can learn incredible skills of resilience and dedication to moving forward. We can ultimately become better people by virtue of what we've overcome.
Yeah. It's great. I know we're gonna be together again. This is actually a two-part series. The second part is going to be Facebook Live, and that's going to be coming up shortly. And unfortunately, when it is aired, it will be a taped version of it. But there'll be a lot of hopefully very good questions that are asked, and I know they're going to get the answers with you. That's pretty much all the time we've got.
Okay.
It goes by fast.
It does go by fast. I would like to let people know about a workshop I'm doing on September 22nd at Wisdom House in Litchfield, Connecticut. If you're available, Poems and Prayers for the Earth. We're going to be learning just the real basics of putting feelings into words, and we're using nature as the medium through which to be able to do that. And I have scholarship money available for anybody.
Do you have is there a website or any way
go,
they can get a hold of you?
My phone number is on the card, 860-678-8779. And you can also go to Eventbrite.com. That's event, BRITE.com, and then put in Poems and Prayers for the Earth in the search, and all the information will magically come up.
And if you lose that number, you can always get a hold of me here at Nutmeg TV or on our Facebook page. Either way, don't panic if you lost the number. We'll get it to you. With that being said, one thing we like to do toward the end of the show is to thank our sponsors. Two of the major sponsors for this show is the American Legion family at Post 209 in Forestville, Connecticut, and also to Pam Shea for a very generous donation for this show. There's a lot of things that go into it, from the coffee mugs and other material that we need. So special thanks to them. That's about all the time we have. I want to thank again our guest, special guest again. Gene, thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure, Chuck. It's an honor.
These are very informative shows. We hope you found it informative. I'm sure you did.
Yeah. Don't give up hope.
Yep. So with that being said, I'm Chuck Wooden. See you next time on the Veterans Corner. Good night.